Hello, everyone. This is your host, Akhil Jabbar, and welcome back to another episode of SaaS District. In today's episode, we'll be talking about the top challenges that cost SaaS startups $100K plus a year and how to avoid them with marketing innovation. Today, we have our guest, Oren Greenberg, joining us. Oren is the founder of Kurve, which is a modular growth marketing consultancy with his experience of helping large corporations and venture-funded startups to navigate the perilous waters of growth and marketing. His impressive track record of results include managing over 10 million pounds of marketing budgets, juggling a paid search campaign with over 13 million keywords, increasing organic traffic from over 2 million page views a month to over 3 million a month for a single client, and scaling paid search campaign by over 139% to over 12,000 B2B clients. Oren's highly regarded digital strategy and commercial expertise have been instrumental in the growth of clients and brands, including Investment Bank, Pecan, Nutmeg, Funding Circle, and has been featured in The Telegraph, Social Media Examiner, Forbes, Entrepreneur, and HubSpot's blog. So welcome, Oren. Glad to have you on the SaaS District today.
Real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So one thing you guys mentioned on your website and what you guys really focus on is provide a CMO on demand for startups and scale-ups. And in this case, I want to know specifically for SaaS companies, because I know you have a lot of expertise there. Can you share what is the role you play with the existing founders and how do you communicate effectively and convince the board to make kind of hard turns on their marketing strategy, invest in you without having skin in the game of the business yourself as a co-founder?
Yeah, got it. I think the simplest way to answer that question is I generally work to a value-based pricing. So I align my remuneration with the results that we're trying to drive. And I think the problem is there's two main points of contention when I speak to founders. The first is I've worked with a large agency and they haven't delivered. Or I've got an agency that delivered, but I'm not getting the results that I require or the quality of the delivery is not there. Mm-hmm. So nowadays, I try and really understand what is the objective. And a lot of the work that I do is really framing the problem. Because a lot of times when I'm speaking to founders or other senior execs, they jump into the tactical. Mm-hmm. And obviously the tactical is where the results are going to come from. Yeah. But if your strategy is wrong, if you're it doesn't matter how fast you're going. If you're going like breakneck speed, but you're going in the wrong direction, you're just going further away from the destination that you had in mind. Now with founders specifically, the on-demand CMO is, I've been doing marketing for 17 years now, and marketing is very fragmented and it's very specialized. A lot of the founders that I work with, they come from a management consulting background, or a finance background, or product tech background. And marketing is a enigmatic area for them where they understand they want growth because they want lead gen and they want new customers and they want to align the product. They want to build a world-class brand and they want to have an amazing team. But they're learning so many different areas of how to run the business simultaneously. Marketing is very complex and very large area. So I come in and I essentially assist all the way from the strategic conceptual level or board level all the way down to what is the best bidding type on LinkedIn or Google Ads and, what channel should we deploy and how should we think and work with that resource to get that result. So it's quite a holistic approach. I think the best analogy is like a car. And then, if you built every part of a car, but you missed out the engine, the sum of everything else, you built the doors, the steering wheel, the chair, like the value of the vehicle is actually, it's incomplete and it doesn't get you from A to B. And I see a lot of businesses in their marketing specifically where they miss all these foundational components when building the vehicle for successful marketing. And what I do is that, now with a car, it's easy because everyone goes, like, how can you not drive a car? It's pretty obvious when it's missing a steering wheel. Right. But imagine when you were first developing a car for the first time, when they were first building a car, they didn't have a blueprint for building the car. And a lot of SaaS businesses, that's what they're doing. They're doing something new that's never been done before for the first time. So it's very hard to see. The thing is, after working with so many different businesses, there's a lot of areas I don't specialize in, but marketing is one I've just gone very deep in for a very long time. So I have a better sense of what's going to perform, what's going to work for a business based on, where I see those challenges with their specific vehicle when it comes to marketing.
Got it. So I'm imagine they probably worked with agencies in the past and they say, hey, we want to, help us with our B2B LinkedIn or do our SEO. But, you're saying, hold on, maybe that's not even the right approach. let's step back a minute and I'll actually help you and advise you. Look at your whole business kind of holistically, and then we decide where to move. Whereas maybe they don't have that knowledge and experience to go speak to an agency, right?
Yeah, I think there's two aspects to it. I think, some of it is the wrong channels. They're operating on the wrong channels.
Mm-hmm.
And the second is they're operating in the wrong way on those channels. And I tend to see more of the latter than the former because there's there's only 28 channels to pick from, really, that are meaningful. And in SaaS, there's only like 6 or 7 core strategies. So I think the main issue is really like execution is poor, but the problem is it's not integrated. And I see a lot of problems primarily with the marketing tech stack and how that's been integrated or mostly not integrated. Too many tools and the team don't know how to use them effectively. Spending the money in the wrong places, they're allocating the budget incorrectly. So, and then they're frustrated, they're not getting the right return. And I think there's like a lot of educational components with founders that there's foundations of marketing they don't really understand. Like a typical example is, okay, Oren, we need to go do Instagram. Like, okay, good morning, happy Monday. Why do we need to go do Instagram? Because one of my investors said that they got a client because, they reached out to them through Instagram. And I go, there was a study done by HBR and they, Harvard Business Review, and they reviewed 200 businesses. And there was only one variable that they found was consistent across all the businesses that were successful. The one variable was they had a clear strategy. Where does Instagram fit into the strategy we just defined last week? It doesn't. You're not going to do it. And that's a very common issue. It's like the need to be everywhere, the need to build a brand by having exposure to as many people as possible. And B2B is not like B2C, and SaaS in B2B is not like B2B. So the way that you approach your marketing strategy can't be through the same lens as you as a consumer, you as a user. And I think too many businesses, especially earlier stage, they're doing too much and focus is king. So a lot of the time I just bring laser focus into what's most critical, but also foundations. In the Japanese, they have a saying called katsu katsu, which is step by step, gradually. And if you think of building a successful business like climbing a mountain, you don't get up to the mountain by making a jump of 1,000 feet. You do it step by step. Yeah. And the same thing is with the strategy, the marketing approach to strategy. I think the only real value that I deliver to the founders is I help save a lot of time on taking the wrong path to get to the top of the mountain. And obviously they want to increase efficiency and they want to get there faster and more cost effectively, and they want to not fall off the edge of the cliff by mistake. So what I do is I kind of like help them do that, but only in the realm of marketing.
Got it. So you're looking at more of like they come in with shotgun approach. Let's be everywhere. You're saying let's focus on one at a time and see what works. Yes. Specifically for B2B SaaS companies, what would you say is your preferred framework or favorite channel that you like to start with, or that you normally set up for, say, generating qualified leads and start increasing sales?
Yeah, got it. So I think there's always two types of SaaS businesses, broadly speaking. The first is kind of low volume, high value enterprise sales, and the second is low value, high volume. Mm-hmm. And they're different. They're different in how everything is different, from the marketing tech stack to the resource deployment to the channel selection. So there's no broad answer. It depends on the two. But within the two, there is something that is consistent, which is are people, our prospects, our customers of the SaaS business, do they have intent? Are they aware of the problem and are they aware of the solution? And it makes most sense to tap into people who have intent and people who are the closest match to the relevant audience, rather than trying to do an awareness long-term content marketing strategy, which everyone's reading about because it's popularized by businesses like HubSpot. And they're like, we should be producing a lot of content. The biggest problem is a lot of businesses produce content but don't distribute it. So they're just producing a lot of blog posts, but no one's reading it. So obviously they're not getting leads. And then most of the quality of the content they're producing is low quality because they have a junior writing it because it's a cost-effective resource. And then it's not interesting to the prospect because that doesn't deliver any value. So the whole problem here around volume, focusing on the wrong channels, and leveraging non-specialized resources in order to try and get a result. My favorite ones effectively is intent-based. So even if it's account-based marketing but with intent, or it's going to be Google Ads, because obviously Google, 50% of digital marketing, the media spend in the UK goes to Google. So if there's intent, that's a high value and definitely the first lowest hanging fruit. And then LinkedIn is obviously one of the key channels for B2B. But once again, it depends on the value. If the ACV, annual contract value, is less than 10K, I don't recommend LinkedIn. It needs to be a certain size prospect and business and the sales cycle, and it depends on what the the solution is. But yeah, that's just like off the top of my head, just a couple of examples of how I think about it for SaaS businesses. Obviously, there's cold outbound. I think cold outbound is needs to be done very well in order to get a result because conversion rates are very low.
That's right. Now that piece you talked about of creating content and the other battle is actually promoting it. So you can maybe have high quality content. How much of your time would you say is like a 50-50? You should be investing half your time on creating, half the other half on promoting, or what's your kind of number you like to use?
So average would be 85% content production, 15% distribution. Good would probably be 50-50. Mm-hmm. And genius would be 15% production, 85% distribution.
So kind of diving into the CMO role a little bit more, with the team that you're working with, are you normally working with the existing marketing team there that they already have? Or are you involved in, say, hiring, managing the marketing team for these startups that you're working with?
Yes, I've done both. So effectively, I've screened and vetted about 130 candidates for businesses to build growth teams in the last couple of years. So I'm heavily involved with helping build that internal team and that competence if that's what's needed. Some businesses, they require specialists. So there's always almost going to be some sort of agency or freelancer that's involved with deployment. Mm-hmm. So generally, I'll bring in different specialists I've worked with over the years for different areas. For example, Facebook ads are very strong in Google ads, so more performance-based channels. And then, I guess there's like, for one of the businesses I was doing work for Canon, I headed up about a team of 8 people, and they were all part-time fractional experts. They were all different freelancers and agencies, and I was managing quite a meaty spend level for them. There was a SaaS business, and that was a very innovative approach, a business that is invested in an entire outsourced marketing arm. And the founders of the CEOs of the business, the original founders that were bought out through M&A, they were like product specialists. So they didn't really know much about marketing. And then we worked really well, and they had the core tech team and the product. And then they had marketing as a core support function. I think the question of whether or not you need to, outsource marketing or have it in-house really comes down to how core is it to your USP, how core is it to your business and your differentiation. But what I do see very often is that juniors are managing marketing, people in 30, 40K salaries, very young, very smart, very ambitious, and very industrious. But the problem is they're very inexperienced and they make a lot of mistakes. And the founders just don't really understand the value of a more experienced hand. It's not that because they've had poor experiences or because I think it's down to the remuneration model where it's like time-based or cost-based rather than actually aligned to the objectives. So I think there's like a few core issues there that I see. But I usually, sometimes I'm parachuted in to resolve specific projects. So it's like a specific initiative and they don't have enough resource. And then I'll just own that project and deliver on it. So it's very varied as to the different types of missions that I undertake as like a marketing CMO ninja.
Yeah, it makes sense. I can see if you are hiring a junior, if you're willing to kind of invest the time in training them and working through them and reviewing their work, which I think a lot of these people just don't have the time or the experience on how to review it. It makes sense to hire more experienced people.
But it's not only about that. It's also there's 2 elements. One of them is speed. If you want to be moving quickly and scaling quickly with your junior talent, then you're going to be constricted by how fast you can move because it takes time to nurture. And then the second is it takes time to nurture. So, I mean, if I've been doing it for 17 years and this person has 2 years experience, how far are they from their 2 years experience on my 17? That's 15 years. Do you have 15 years to wait until they reach a CMO level? And even if they do at that point in their career, when they're like 17 years of experience in, what salary would they command? They would have to reflect. So the reason I came up with the on-demand CMO model is I saw businesses require some of my seniority, but they can't afford to pay for full time. So in my head, coming in and doing a fractional work and giving them strategic time and support helps really save them a lot of money in the long term. And so far, that's proven correct in my hypothesis.
And I imagine you need to decide on those employee or freelancer expenses with a startup upfront, because if you're going to say, hey, I need a Facebook ads manager, a content manager, and all these experienced people, they'll be expensive, right?
It depends how you structure the model with them, yes.
Do you do kind of, partial based, like
It depends on the resource, right? So there's a depending flexibility, but yeah, some contractors they really like the business and they see a long-term relationship. Others on a fixed rate. But I think the answer is, what is it? What is your objective and is it working? But if it's not performing, then yes, it's expensive. But if it is performing, then how else are you going to achieve the growth? You have to invest to achieve the growth, right? And everyone talks about being unique and different, but that fundamentally, You need to get as much exposure to your audience, your relevant audience as possible. And all marketing agencies, freelancers, and CMOs, that's effectively their goal. Is what is the most creative message that's most relevant for your audience at the right time, and that's the foundations of marketing.
And where are you hiring these members from the team, the marketing experts? Do you have a specific channel you like to look at, and what is your process for hiring or building that entire marketing department? Other than experience, what are you looking at?
Yeah, great. I'd say the majority comes through referral, actually. So I'm active in about 16 marketing groups. So I have a lot of them access to a lot of different marketing communities. And I'm very active with speaking events, podcasts, and I have a very buoyant network here in London, having been doing it for so long. So a lot of it is, and I'm quite ruthless. So I'll try someone out, and if they don't deliver, I cut them. But I double down on the ones who are working, and I see potential in them. Yeah, so it's mostly just trying them out. But I've created my own framework for testing and validating different channels and different experts, and I've worked with senior proven experts who help me create the framework to test more effective, people who are earlier on in their career and they're more affordable. So there's a nice, interesting mix of talent that I work with from senior level all the way to junior level, depending on the state of what needs to get done, what the problem is. Yeah, and then so with them, I vet them, and then we double down on working with the ones who actually perform well over time for the different clients. It's not too complicated. I think my model, the way it's different from the majority of agencies, I used to run a traditional agency where I had a team of 22, and we would, there's lots of juniors, and the markup was great, but they just didn't have the experience or expertise. And I remember at one point, one of them said, "I don't know, what's the difference between HTTP and HTTPS?" And I was just like, what am I even doing? Like, why do I have these people here? And then I realized, actually, I'd rather pay more money and a premium that takes up a lot less time and energy from me for someone who already is very competent. And it's like a mental shift. So now I have less time of people with a lot more experience rather than a lot of time with people who require so much hand holding. Now, I do believe business does need to have layers of seniority to grow and scale. Mm-hmm. But I think if you're delivering a high quality, high-end service that's very strategic and really is going to have a big shift, a big impact in the business, I don't see how juniors partake. And I think that's where my model is more of a consultancy than a typical agency.
And I imagine you can also charge more for the experience as well, right? Because even if you're hiring more experienced people, then your rate obviously goes up if you're working with clients as well, because you're going to deliver. Are you measuring?
Yeah, it's not about the rate. It's not about our rate. It's about the value we unlock. So sure. Effectively, if we can unlock more value, we don't have to justify our costs, because we're not a cost, we're an investment. Like when you invest money, you don't think, how much is it costing me to invest the money? You're thinking, what are the gains I'm going to receive? So with a more experienced hands, I believe that I'm going to mitigate risk and deliver better performance. And so far, it's proven correct. And because it takes less manhandling, effectively, they just make less mistakes. So they have more experience, they make less mistakes, and those mistakes can be very costly. Like, I had one of the businesses I support, they have a junior, and the other day, they burnt like 5K on Twitter because she went on holiday and she didn't check conversion tracking. It's like none of the experts I work with would even go on holiday without checking that the tracking is working. But the juniors didn't know. And, I have to accommodate the different people that are in the organization. But sometimes I talk to founders and I'm like, look, the resource you've provided, it's going to be hard for me to deliver a result with this. And then it's a hard conversation. And then, I really believe in nurturing talent in the business. And sometimes I take on the mentor mantle on behalf of my client. But it is very challenging and sometimes to really drive results and support and carry the people who don't have the experience on my back.
And then when you're saying you're measuring results and then, cutting people as quickly as possible, is there one or two metrics you've got? Is it just results of performance of the campaign? Or is it just execution and how fast you're executing and making sure the quality is there?
I think it's both about results and quality, but effectively it's like the number of mistakes and the type of mistakes. For example, someone the other day, one of the juniors, they sent me a graph. And when you added up the percentages on the graph, it came to 110%. It should have been 100%. And the graph had top 20 and he chopped it down to top 4. And I'm like, how is this still the same percentage? I was like, you did it without thinking. And that's an unacceptable type of mistake. So there's a mistake which is, I don't have the experience. I made a mistake because I didn't know. And there's a mistake which was, I didn't put the effort and the energy into thinking how to solve this problem well. And therefore I did a crap job at it. And I've delivered, I shouldn't have delivered that piece of work if it wasn't ready. and I should have communicated that. And that's like, I mean, obviously I warn people and I nurture and work with them as best as I can. Some people, they just, they're not passionate about it, or they're not engaged, or, it's too hard. Like the learning curve is too steep. They're not, or their talents lie elsewhere, I think, in terms of personality or interest. And so I've worked with people like that as well. And actually, I think it's better for them to let them go sooner, so they can go and find their path in life that is right for them, rather than try and like fit the wrong shape into the wrong jigsaw. It just doesn't work.
Fair enough. Talking about the marketing channel strategy, with so many channels, to focus your budget and your time on, how do you decide on which channels, let's specifically B2B SaaS company, should be focused on? And then how are you testing and validating those channels for their market? Do these businesses already have product market fit, and you're just going off of what the competitors are doing and seeing what's working, or do you have kind of a way that works for you?
Yeah, so generally we work with companies that have product market fit. On the rare occasion that I think that there's a strong USP, then I'll take on a client that doesn't have PMF.
Mm-hmm.
And then channel validation is an interesting one. I think the easiest way to answer that question is it goes down to kind of qualifying intent. So finding the intent-based channels first, and then broadening to try and understand where the audience lives. Then we deploy the experiments, mostly through paid ads initially, but also we can do outreach. And then we work effectively, we look at the funnel and what the conversion rates looks like, all the way from cost per click down to deal one. And then we look through lead, marketing qualified lead, sales accepted lead, sales qualified lead. So we know the value of each. We run the experiment and we see how often is a calibration based on what the CAC LTV ratio needs to be. So effectively, if we know that we're on a channel, we're deploying a test, and we're like 50x off what an acceptable CAC is, and we're not going to optimize that channel to achieve a realistic CAC. Like, we just scrap that. But if it's like 2 or 3x, and we believe, the channel expert believes we can continue to optimize and get big results and big improvements because we haven't done some of the foundations, we'll double down on the channel. So really, the key is to diversify multiple channels initially, ideally as many as possible, so then you can double down on what works and cut what doesn't work. And there are some exceptions. We did have a client where they were doing Google ads for a long time, and they were actually, it was a B2C business, not a SaaS business, and they were selling luxury baby clothes. And then they changed it to focus on affluent areas, and they cracked Google ads as a result. And the reason was, obviously, because it was luxury baby clothes, the Google ads were running same keywords, just a different geography targeting, and that was very successful. So the key here to really think about it is, how long do I need to run the campaign on the channel for in order to get a result, versus how, like, if I persisted with it, would I get a result through persisting? And that's where I think it's more art than science and more experience based. But there are benchmarks that we work to. We have a lot of experience with the space, so we can kind of see what's working or not. But a lot of the time, there's a lot of issues where the audience is unclear defined, the TAM isn't clearly defined, the total addressable market, the product features, they're not really differentiated in the market space. The messaging isn't clear on what the value of the proposition is to the audience. There's usually a lot of foundations that are in place. It's arbitrary, like, them doing multiple channels. It's not really measured. There's no data layer in place. They're not using Google Tag Manager, Google Analytics, or Segment. And it's quite, so they know they need to do it. They just haven't done it because it's very specialized. And, the other day I came across a SaaS business, and they were using Intercom. And they wanted Intercom to do what Autopilot does. So they wanted to send personalized email sequences based on in-product behavior. And they spent 2.5 months trying to get that Intercom to do it. And I said, it doesnit's make sense. It's like you're trying to get a bicycle to do what a car does. Why didn't you just go get a car instead? So they went to Autopilot. They're like, wow, this is incredible. So, sometimes it's just like, a lot of the work I do is on the MarTech, because the MarTech's usually where things go wrong with SaaS businesses.
Makes sense. And then I know you had a story. Can you share that story of one of your clients where you came in, you helped with their marketing channel and customer journey? It took them, I think, they're having basically 0 leads, and then now I think they're generating 500 leads per day.
Yes. Yeah. So, that was, I think, actually, funny enough, it was around the intent-based channel. So we're doing one channel, which was Facebook ads, and they were targeting the offering. There were 2 key components. One of them was I re-engineered the customer journey. So in their head, their product and their offering was in the top of the funnel and the initial stage of what the customer was buying. And in my mind, it wasn't. It was after that initial experience. It was in the second touch point. So that's where we had the philosophical gap, where they thought, okay, no, people can use that product whenever, however. And I'm like, no. they really experience the most benefit when it's on that second stage. So that was the first shift, and I needed to research and understand the whole customer journey to get that realization. And then the second was I just shifted it to Google Ads, but the whole funnel changed. Instead of a Facebook ad to a mobile app, which was the initial touch point for this business, we actually did it to a landing page with a form fill and then a chatbot, and that actually that cracked it. So it went from 0 leads a day to 500 leads a day by shifting the whole funnel and understanding how to remap the proposition to the right pain point for that audience. But yeah, understanding the audience in more detail was really the key for it. And I think that's really the key for any foundational success in marketing. The better you understand the audience, the more likely all of the other initiatives are going to have a positive result.
It makes sense. So you also mentioned that, the core of this podcast is how startups or any business can easily blow through, 100K plus a year with maybe little to show for their marketing efforts. Part of it is hiring junior people. Part of it is not knowing how to set up the right marketing channel. So adding to that above question, if businesses don't have the right touch point strategy, and as a result, they're spending money on traffic that doesn't have a chance of even converting, what are some other changes you suggest that maybe that'll help them increase their ROI?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, the way I see it effectively is if you're targeting the wrong audience, or you have the wrong message, or you're targeting the wrong channel, right? Or you're effectively targeting at the wrong time, right? They're not ready to buy your proposition. They're not interested in it at the time. You're not going to get a result. So you need to have, clear messaging with the right audience, the right channel, the right timing. And now if you can't find them at the right time, you need to capture their interest and nurture them, which is where a traditional content marketing strategy comes into play. So those are kind of the core foundations. There's a few variations and nuance in a few more categories in there in terms of understanding the alignment between messaging and the channel and the audience. But all of the problems and mistakes that I see are effectively a result of that. So for instance, I had a client the other day, and the marketing manager, she was running Facebook ads. They were spending like 30 to 50K a month in Facebook ads. And what happened, it was a SaaS business, and they took the audience to a blog post, but there was no call to action. So they ran it for 3 months. And then I said, okay, so what was your thinking behind this? Well, we're just prospecting. And I said, but how are you retargeting them? No. So how are you taking them to the next stage? So they're just coming, consuming the content and leaving. Yeah. So when did you have in mind to start taking them to action? She's like, in 3 months' time. And I'm like, why? Well, because there's the stages of taking them from awareness to consideration to decision. And then I was like, wow, she kind of understood the conceptual principles, but she just didn't apply. It's almost like, I don't know, it's like in order to go running, you need to increase your speed. And if you increase your speed, you'll cover more distance. So first run out the door you've never run before, and you try and run like a 20K sprint, every day that week, because at sprint speed, because you're like, I read that I need to be, and like if I describe that to you, you're like, that's crazy, why would anyone do it? But marketing is specialized, it's difficult. So you can see how she's reading all this content online, trying to figure out that she's making these foundational mistakes. Yeah. So all we did was we took them to a free trial landing page, and we dropped the cost per lead from £450 to £18.
There you go.
Same audience, same message, same targeting. Everything's the same. Just change the landing page, change the message from a blog post and CTA to a free trial, and look at the cost per lead. And then suddenly the board are like, wow, this is amazing. This guy's a genius. And it sounds really simple when I describe it. It's like, why do we need to hire a CMO to do this? And the answer is because they were struggling for 3 months to do it until I came in. And because of my experience, I was able to do that in like 2 days. The one that I took from 0 to 500 leads a day took me 2.5 months. So it's very variable because there's educational components, there's infrastructure components, and it's not always possible. I mean, these are the success stories. There's other businesses that, I haven't got those results for. And the reason is because the truth is the product just isn't there. The product's not differentiated enough. It doesn't add enough meaningful value. And marketing does not solve the problem for what is, to be honest, a product that no one wants to buy. Like, you can't convince people to buy something they don't want. And the problem is that a lot of SaaS founders, they're building products and they're not doing enough qualitative or quantitative insight into their customers and getting to a meaningful product market fit. Or, interestingly enough, they get really strong product market fit, but the TAM is very small. They then raise a lot of money, but then the TAM is so small, they now effectively have raised money to validate a whole new business in a whole new market with a whole new audience. And then it's like a worst case scenario, actually. You just raise 5 mil and you're like, oh, I don't have enough customers to tap into. I need to create a whole new product offering now. You should have done that before they raised the 5 mil, right? In order to try and figure that out. So I've been through that journey a few times as well.
I imagine something for like that scenario where she was running ads to the blog articles. I mean, she could have retargeted them to a landing page within, it could have converted within a week, right? She didn't have to wait 3 months. Maybe I think I think the thinking there was probably that the retargeting has to happen in stages where it could happen in a shortened time period, right? And
So there were two issues there. The first issue is people misunderstand how many people click on a retargeting ad, because the average amount of people clicking on retargeting is only 5% of your audience.
Mhm.
So if you're only going to get 5% of the whole audience to retarget them, you're missing out on 95%. That's why the landing page was superior. So that's the first issue. And then the second issue is the retargeting ad generally is usually not personalized enough, or the value isn't high enough. Yeah, and people don't really think well enough about segmenting the audience with the right retargeting that's meaningful for them. They're just
Right.
like, why don't we just offer them a free ebook that we just spend half a day writing?
Mhm.
And the truth is, if you're not adding meaningful value to your core prospects with every touch point, then you're not going to retain them and build a successful business.
Makes sense. So I love the idea which you talk about using personalized videos in your B2B outreach efforts, I believe.
Yes.
Are you a fan of email, outbound, LinkedIn, or do you use a combination of both when you're doing that?
Yeah. So I think it's really, I think cold email has a quality that's different than LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is kind of I think it's a longer sales cycle.
Mhm.
And I think it's more of an authority building sales cycle, where I think that you can build a fan base to broadcast on social and build a brand in a way that you can't do with cold email, right? So I don't think it's really a like for like per se. I think the problem is a lot of SaaS businesses, they just need leads because they have revenue targets. So they kind of binary compare the two. But when you think of, like, from my perspective, long term, A round, B round, C round, you want to really be building a remarkable brand, and it starts from day one. And for me, it's like, if you have it comes down to the strategy. If you believe that paid social and your audience are active on LinkedIn, that makes sense. Some SaaS businesses, their audience are not living on LinkedIn, so that doesn't make sense as a strategy. And cold email is the only way to reach them. So really, it's about, like, where does your audience live? What do they engage with? How saturated is that? Like, if you're super commoditized and you're competing with a very large player who's very dominant there, that could be very hard, right? So it's really about finding that competitive angle. I think cold email can cut through in a more superior way, yeah. But I think it really varies on, once again, it's how do you use templates and personalize at scale, and how smart and clever, how creative are you with doing that?
And can you share what's your processes for generating those sales qualified leads? At scale, and then also including that personalized video component to it. What is
Yeah,
the
yeah, sure.
message? Yeah,
Yeah,
how long?
so for the video, this experiment that we ran for a client, we get them a 4x increase on the sales qualified lead volume.
Mhm.
And then what I did is I took the sales guy and I got him to create personalized videos for each prospect, and that cut through because each video was tailored to them. But, like, these accounts were worth 20 to 30,000 a year. So for him to spend that much time where he wasn't getting cut through, it was very meaningful. It was a 4x increase. So did he need to put more time and energy? Yes, but with a limited TAM, a total addressable market, a very small amount of relevant clients that he can target, it was very critical for him to invest that energy and time. So, and I think a lot of times now when people are sending out cold email, they think it's a volume game. But the problem is, your touch points with your prospects are incredibly valuable, because it's when you're making an impression. It's like a first date.
Mhm.
And it's like, if someone just comes to the first date and takes out a piece of paper and narrates to you on the first day, like some sort of generic message about why you're wonderful, it's not really going to cut through as much as, like, they're there present with you in that experience, and it's happening spontaneously. So obviously with cold email, you need to semi-engineer it.
Mhm.
And obviously you need to do it at a scale to have meaningful results. But the problem is, what I see is it's too generic. And then you can't come through with the generic because everyone's being bombarded with cold emails all day. So it's really about the creative strategy and how you cut through the noise and target the audience, more so than the channel specifically.
So just getting more in the nitty gritty there. How long are these videos? What is the format you're sending it through? Are these just Loom videos? What is the messaging that you suggest? You can use that example, or just in general how you should structure it.
Sure.
For the
Yeah. So the videos were recorded with a good quality camera with proper lighting, and we used was in a Loom video. I can't remember the name of it. I'll mention it later. And they hold up a sign, and then it says hello, first name, so semi-personalized.
Mhm.
But then when they click the video and it opens up, there's a logo of the company plus the business logo. So then it's like, okay, they went through the effort of personalizing for the logo. And then the message is effectively a very simple hook, which is, I noticed something about your business. The second was we've delivered a result to very similar businesses. So this is a result that we've delivered to these businesses. And, I'd love to have a conversation to chat and see if this is relevant to you. So just a first initial, let's have a conversation. Now, the pros of this method is that it got more sales qualified leads. The negative is that, the open rate is relatively low still. You have a low open rate and then a low response rate. And then in reality, out of every 10 videos, you only got 2 emails back. Mm-hmm. So the amount of effort he needed to put in to get the responses overall strategically was positive, but energetically for him on a personal level was very demanding. Now, the key to resolving that is just do a bit every day. So rather than do 4-hour stints once a week, just do 30 minutes every day and get into this cadence of producing the personalized video. But yeah, it's still a strategy that they've used now for the last 8 months, and it's performing well for them.
Cool. What's your favorite tech stack? You mentioned a few for marketing tech for improving results, or maybe some recommendations for SaaS companies to start using today if they're not already using.
Yeah, I don't believe in the generic tech stacks. There's 7,100 solutions in the market. I just did a collaboration with SimilarWeb, and we enriched the whole marketing tech stack landscape. So, it's actually a really cool project that I'm working on. It'd be great to share it to the audience, and they can sign up to get early access.
Sure.
And what is very interesting looking at and these different subcategories of what's growing and what's shrinking in the marketing landscape. And what's very clear is there are clear winners and losers. But saying that, just because a company is growing or is winning doesn't mean they're necessarily the right solution. And I think the problem is nowadays, people are paying a premium for high-quality brands that do a great job of marketing, but the solution doesn't necessarily meet their needs.
Sure.
I'm not going to mention any specific brands now because some of them I work with. But sometimes you can pay for a solution that's like 5x cheaper, and it has 90% of the same features and functionality. I had this the other day with a client where they spent, there's about £85,000 on a very well-known CRM and multiple licenses, and the sales team were reluctant to use it. They didn't upskill the sales team in using it. It was very complex. They didn't set it up properly, and then he had a marketing automation solution integrated with it, and they just sat there unused. There was a huge amount of money that was just wasted. And he bought it. When I asked him, why do you buy it? He said, because it's best in class. I'm like, what's the point of having the best in class Porsche that no one's using? And this isn't like a Porsche that's like on the pavement that you can justify making my neighbors jealous. This is a Porsche that's in a garage in another country that you're not using. Yeah. And then you're like, what was the point of spending that much money? Now, proportional to his total marketing budget, that was a huge amount of money that he invested and burnt through to buy the wrong solution. Now, because of that, I'm very reluctant to suggest specific tech stacks. And I think there's more, it needs to really be tailored to what the business is doing, where it's at. There are specific pieces of kit that I enjoy using, but they're quite varied. I like HubSpot for different reasons. I use Autopilot for different reasons. I use SharpSpring for different reasons. So, I use different types of tools for different purposes. If it's Unbound to Instapage for different reasons. So, I don't have, I have ones that I haven't used everything, obviously, but I have used at least 100 to 150 different pieces of kit over the last 17 years.
Sounds like that heavy, expensive tool sounds like something that starts with an S and ends with a force, is my guess.
Yes. And it is the best CRM in the market of the 220 CRMs. But the thing is, and if you had a sales team of 15 people and you had a strong cold outbound lead gen and marketing was resolved, and you had the biggest problem, I think, is for a lot of the SaaS founders is they go very sales heavy. And the reason is they believe sales guys can do prospecting and they can close. The reality is most salespeople are account executives. They're not actually SDR, sales development reps. Right. So the problem is they're not focused on doing lead generation. And what happens is they shift all the money to sales and not enough money for marketing. And the sales guys are expected to go generate leads, which they can't do because they don't have content and they don't know how to do it well. And then that's a big issue. So I reckon that part of that is the mentality with why they're choosing a very expensive piece of kit to support the sales team. But effectively, they have too big a sales team. They're too thin on marketing. And part of this is because of actually comes down to like product differentiation. It comes down to clarity over who the audience is. It comes down to the overall strategy, or usually lack of strategy. And yes, there's quite a few different components. And I'm not being ambiguous on purpose. It's just that for so many businesses now, there is no specific way that things break. Like every business has its own resource and its own MarTech and its own technology. And that creates all this variability that makes it very hard to predict and explain what the best solution is. And I think it's a problem. People are seeking generic solutions that are cheap for complex problems, and it just doesn't work. It fails. And you need to find the right resource for the right problem. And that's where it's hard, because a lot of the time people are selecting the wrong resources for the right problems and they don't deliver a result. And that's very frustrating.
Makes sense. I've heard that a couple times in my career. Thank you so much, Oren. Where can our audience get in touch with you and learn more about your services for their own business?
Yeah, sure. So it'd be great if you can share the link to the landing page on the Martech study. I think that would be very interesting. And then if people want to reach out directly to have a chat and get my advice, then you can just ping me a message on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn? Okay, awesome. We'll put those links in the show note. Thank you so much, Oren. I highly appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Take care. Thank you all for watching this episode and joining SaaS District today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for future episodes where we interview top leaders in the SaaS industry. If you're a SaaS company looking to grow and unlock the true value of your business, get in touch with us at Horizon Capital, and myself or one of our consultants will provide a free assessment to help you get there and hit your goals. If you have any feedback or suggestions for this podcast, please comment down below and help us improve our content for you all. Thanks again, and see you on the next one.